Hello, my kiddos. Okay, so last time we ended on pretty much a cliffhanger, about as literally a cliffhanger as possible. Uh, the the thing that the dwarves had awakened when they dug too deep into the mountain turned out to be a Balrog, which is kind of like a fire demon thing. And Gandalf faced off with it twice. And the second time that he faced off with it, they were over the narrow stone bridge that leads out of Moria. And both the Balrog and Gandalf fell from the bridge. And that's where we left the story. So here we are. The fires went out, and blank darkness fell. The company stood rooted with horror, staring into the pit. Even as Aragorn and Boromir came flying back, the rest of the bridge cracked and fell. With a cry, Aragorn roused them. "Come, I will lead you now," he called. "We must obey his last command. Follow me." They stumbled wildly up the great stairs beyond the door, Aragorn leading, Boromir at the rear. At the top was a wide, echoing passage. Along this they fled. Frodo heard Sam at his side weeping, and then he found that he himself was weeping as he ran. Doom, 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 the drum beats rolled behind, mournful now and slow. Doom! Mom's calling me. I'll be back. All right, kiddos, I'm back. And I had dinner, so now I have energy. They ran on. The light grew before them. Great shafts pierced the roof. They ran swifter. They passed into a hall, bright with daylight from its high windows in the east. They fled across it. Through its huge broken doors they passed, and suddenly before them the great gates opened, an arch of blazing light. There was a guard of orcs crouching in the shadows behind the great doorposts, towering on either side, but the gates were shattered and cast down. Aragorn smote to the ground the captain that stood in his path, and the rest fled in terror of his wrath. The company swept past them and took no heed of them. Out of the gates they ran and sprang down the huge and age-worn steps, the threshold of Moria. Thus at last they came beyond hope under the sky and felt the wind on their faces. They did not halt until they were out of bowshot from the walls. Dimrill Dale lay about them. The shadow of the misty mountains lay upon it, but eastward there was a golden light on the land. It was but 1 hour after noon. The sun was shining, the clouds were white and high. They looked back. Dark yawned the archway of the gates under the mountain shadow. Faint and far beneath the earth rolled the slow drum beats. Doom! A thin black smoke trailed out. Nothing else was to be seen. The dale all around was empty. Doom! Grief at last wholly overcame them, and they wept long, some standing and silent, some cast upon the ground. Doom! Doom! The drum beats faded. And that was the end of chapter 5. Now we're at chapter 6, Lothlorien. "Alas, I fear we cannot stay here longer," said Aragorn. He looked towards the mountain and held up his sword. "Farewell, Gandalf," he cried. "Did I not say to you, if you pass the doors of Moria, beware? Alas, I spoke true. What hope have we without you?" He turned to the company. "We must do without hope," he said. "At least we may yet be avenged. Let us gird ourselves and weep no more. Come, we have a long road and much to do." They rose and looked about them. Northward the dale ran up into a glen of shadows between 2 great arms of the mountains, above which 3 white peaks were shining. Celebdil, Fanuidol, Caradras, the mountains of Moria. At the head of the glen, a torrent flowed like a white lace over the endless ladder of shortfalls, and the mist of foam hung in the air about the mountain's feet. "Yonder is Dimril Stair," said Aragorn, pointing to the falls. "Down the deep cloven way that climbs beside the torrent we should have come, if fortune had been kinder." "Or Caradras less cruel," said Gimli. "There he stands smiling in the sun." He shook his fist at the furthest of the snow-capped peaks and turned away. To the east, the outflung arm of the mountains marched to a sudden end, and far lands could be descried beyond them, wide and vague. To the south, the misty mountains receded endlessly as far as sight could reach. Less than a mile away, and a little below them, for they still stood high up on the west side of the dale, there lay a mere. It was long and oval, shaped like a great spearhead thrust deep into the northern glen. But its southern end was beyond the shadows under the sunlit sky. Yet its waters were dark, a deep blue like clear evening sky seen from a lamplit room. Its face was still and unruffled. About it lay a smooth sward, shelving down on all sides to its bare, unbroken rim. "There lies the Mirromere, deep Keled Zaram," said Gimli sadly. "I remember that he said, 'May you have joy of the sight, but we cannot linger here.' Now long shall I journey here ere I have joy again. It is I that must hasten away, and he that must remain." The company now went down the road from the gates. It was rough and broken, fading to a winding track between heather and whim that thrust amid the cracking stones. But still it could be seen that once long ago a great paved way had wound upwards from the lowlands to the dwarf kingdom. In places there were ruined works of stone beside the path, and mounds of green topped with slender birches, the fir trees sighing in the wind. An eastward bend led them hard by the sward of Mirromere, and there, not far from the roadside, stood a single column broken at the top. "That is Durin stone," cried Gimli. "I cannot pass without turning aside for a moment to look at the wonder of the dale." "Be swift then," said Aragorn, looking back towards the gates. "The sun sinks early. The orcs will not, maybe, come out till after dusk, but we must be far away before nightfall. The moon is almost spent, and it will be dark tonight." "Come with me, Frodo," cried the dwarf, springing from the road. "I would not have you go without seeing Keled Zaram." He ran down the long green slope. Frodo followed slowly, drawn by the still blue water in spite of hurt and weariness. Sam came up behind. Beside the standing stone, Gimli halted and looked up. It was cracked and weather-worn, and the faint runes upon its side could not be read. "This pillar marks the spot where Durin first looked in the Mirromere," said the dwarf. "Let us look ourselves once ere we go." They stooped over the dark water. At first they could see nothing. Then slowly they saw the forms of the encircling mountains, mirrored in a profound blue, and the peaks were like plumes of white flame above them. Beyond there was a space of sky. There, like jewels sunk in the deep, shone glinting stars, though sunlight was in the sky above. Of their own stooping forms no shadow could be seen. "O Keled Zaram, fair and wonderful," said Gimli. "There lies the crown of Durin till he wakes. Farewell." He bowed and turned away and hastened back up the greensward to the road again. "What did you see?" said Pippin to Sam. But Sam was too deep in thought to answer. The road now turned south and went quickly downwards. running out from between the arms of the dale. Some way below the mere, they came on a deep well of water, clear as crystal, from which a freshet fell over a stone lip and ran glistening and gurgling down a steep rocky channel. "Here is the spring from which the silver lode rises," said Gimli. "Do not drink of it. It is icy cold. Soon it becomes a swift river, and it gathers water from many other mountain streams," said Aragorn. "Our road leads beside it for many miles. For I shall take you by the road that Gandalf chose, and first I hope to come to the woods where the silver lode flows into the great river, out yonder." They looked as he pointed, and before them they could see the stream leaping down to the trough of the valley, and then running on and away into the lower lands until it was lost in a golden haze. "There lie the woods of Lothlorien," said Legolas. "That is the fairest of all the dwellings of my people. There are no trees like the trees of that land, for in the autumn their leaves fall not, but turn to gold. Not till the spring comes and the new green opens do they fall, and then the boughs are laden with yellow flowers. And the floor of the wood is golden, and golden is the roof, and its pillars are of silver, for the bark of the trees is smooth and gray. So still our songs in Mirkwood say. My heart would be glad if I were beneath the eaves of that wood, and it were springtime." "My heart will be glad even in the winter," said Aragorn, "but it lies many miles away. Let us hasten." For some time Frodo and Sam managed to keep up with the others, but Aragorn was leading them at a great pace, and after a while they lagged behind. They had eaten nothing since the early morning. Sam's cut was burning like fire, and his head felt light. In spite of the shining sun, the wind seemed chill after the warm darkness of Moria. He shivered. Frodo felt every step more painful, and he gasped for breath. At last Legolas turned, and seeing them now far behind, he spoke to Aragorn. The others halted, and Aragorn ran back, calling to Boromir to come with him. "I am sorry, Frodo," he cried, full of concern. "So much has happened this day, and we have such need of haste that I have forgotten that you were hurt, and Sam too. You should have spoken. We have done nothing to ease you as we ought, though all the orcs of Moria were after us. Come now, a little further on there is a place where we can rest for a little. There I will do what I can for you. Come, Boromir, we will carry them." Soon afterwards they came upon another stream that ran down from the west, and joined its bubbling water with the hurrying silver lode. Together they plunged over a fall of green-hued stone, and foamed down into a dell. About it stood fir trees, short and bent, and its sides were steep and clothed with hartstongue and shrubs of whortleberry. At the bottom there was a level space through which the stream flowed noisily over shining pebbles. Here they rested. It was now nearly 3 hours after noon, and they had come only a few miles from the gates. Already the sun was westering. While Gimli and the 2 younger hobbits kindled a fire of brush and fir wood, and drew water, Aragorn tended Sam and Frodo. Sam's wound was not deep, but it looked ugly, and Aragorn's face was grave as he examined it. After a moment he looked up with relief. "Good luck, Sam," he said. "Many have received worse than this in payment for the slaying of their first orc. The cut is not poisoned, as the wounds of orc blades too often are. It should heal when I have tended it. Bathe it when Gimli has heated water." He opened his pouch and drew out some withered leaves. "They are dry, and some of their virtue has gone," he said, "but here I have still some of the leaves of athelas that I gathered near Weathertop. Crush one in the water and wash the wound clean, and I will bind it. Now it is your turn, Frodo." "I am all right," said Frodo, reluctant to have his garments touched. "All I needed was some food and a little rest." "No," said Aragorn, "we must have a look and see what the hammer and the anvil have done to you. I still marvel that you are alive at all." Gently he stripped off Frodo's old jacket and worn tunic, and gave a gasp of wonder. Then he laughed. The silver corselet shimmered before his eyes like the light upon a rippling sea. Carefully he took it off and held it up, and the gems on it glittered like stars, and the sound of the shaken rings was like the tinkle of rain in a pool. "Look, my friends," he called, "here's a pretty hobbit skin to wrap an elven princeling in. If it were known that hobbits had such hides, all the hunters of Middle-earth would be riding to the Shire." "And all the arrows of all the hunters in the world would be in vain," said Gimli, gazing at the mail in wonder. "It is a mithril coat. Mithril! I have never seen or heard tell of one so fair. Is this the coat that Gandalf spoke of? Then he undervalued it, but it was well given. I have often wondered what you and Bilbo were doing so close in his little room," said Merry. "Bless the old hobbit! I love him more than ever. I hope we get a chance of telling him about it." There was a dark and blackened bruise on Frodo's right side and breast. Under the mail there was a shirt of soft leather, but at one point the rings had been driven through it into the flesh. Frodo's left side also was scored and bruised where he had been hurled against the wall. While the others set the food ready, Aragorn bathed the hurts with water in which Athelas was steeped. The pungent fragrance filled the dell, and all those who stooped over the steaming water felt refreshed and strengthened. Soon Frodo felt pain leave him, and his breath grew easy, though he was stiff and sore to the touch for many days. Aragorn bound some soft pads of cloth at his side. "The mail is marvelously light," he said. "Put it on again if you can bear it. My heart is glad to know that you have such a coat. Do not lay it aside, even in sleep, unless fortune brings you where you are safe for a while, and that will seldom chance while your quest lasts." All right, we're going to stop there, kiddos. I love you always and forever, no matter what.